Hey everyone! Back again for another marble demonstration. Today, as usual, we'll make a marble out of glass rods and a propane oxygen torch. I'm using Moretti rods, which are considered soft glass or crystal glass. The marble I'm going to make is one of my favorites. It's a Monster Eye. It's half opaque, half clear. It's got some an eye design on one side. In between the layers is either dichroic or silver gold leaf. Today I'm going to use silver leaf. And we're going to do some prep work to start us off. So the marble itself, once you get going, is you have sort of a gather in your hand. And at the end, you need some fine threads for doing your detail work, and you can have those made in advance. This is a two-color strand that I've pulled out of two colors of glass. I'm going to pull a few of those just for fun because it's awesome, and we may use those. We may go back to these. We'll see. We're going to start with a black marble. We're going to use silver foil. Let's show you that. Here it is in rouge paper. I'll take that off now. The paper keeps the foil from blowing away. I don't like to get the foil wet or stick it to anything, so I'm just going to leave it in such a way that I can uncover it again in just a minute. Alright, let's adjust things a little bit, and it looks like we're about ready to go. I got my filter on the camera, so you should be shielded from the sodium flare, which is a yellow, bushy looking part of the flame when the glass rods go into it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is our prep work for the end of the marble, which is a two-color twisted thread. So I'm going to flash two colors that I'm going to choose to use to decorate the end of the marble. I'm going to use light green and purple. Let's pose with them. I will do something like that later, maybe for the thumbnail. I don't know. We'll see. So for pulling a two-color stringer, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. You're going to have one color which you're going to use as the base color. So you're going to heat about an inch of that rod, preheat, so that when the other hot glass gets dripped along it, it won't crack. I'm going to use the other rod as a gather rod and lay a slug of color along the base rod. And so there, I've done that. I've put a slug of the purple on top of the green. I can do just one. In this case, I'm going to do two. I'm going to put another slug of color on the back side. And now, there's a couple different ways you could go about twisting this up. You could just use the rods as handles. You could switch off this gather that you've just built. That's basically three stripes. You could switch it over to steel punties if you're using soft glass, which is gives you quite a lot more control over the whole piece of glass. For us today, I'm just going to use the glass rods themselves as handles. I've heated the whole thing up together. I'm imparting a lot of twist, and then I'm going to start stretching it to its final diameter, which is about 1.5 millimeters. I'm going to twist it until it refuses to be twisted anymore. I'm going to heat one end until it separates. Go ahead and preheat some tweezer tips to grab this so I don't crack it. And separate this from the other one. And let's look. It's probably cool enough to touch now. Small part, yes. And let's look at our stripes. Purple and light green. Looks nice. Let's make one more. I'll use, for decorating my monster eyes, I'll generally use about a foot of twisted stringer. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Depends on the design I want to do on the back. So I've recondensed down the ends of the rods to make myself a good starting point. Now let's flip. I'm going to use the purple rod as the base rod and the green rod as the color, as the accent. If I want a broader background and a smaller stripe, I'll just put one color stripe on there. If I wanted 3 colors, I could put 2 different color stripes on there. I want the colors to be even on these threads. I'm going to put just a little gather on one side. Okay. And let's put one on the other side. And this time, I'm going to show you how to switch off to metal handles. So I've got a stainless steel punty rod or handle. I'm going to preheat the end and touch it to the end of the rod. Now I'm going to heat where the colors all stop, the accent colors stop on the base rod. Take that off. And I already put a little bit of twist in it. Let's see. So I'm going to go back, heat up a handle for the other side, start heating my glass slug, attach my other handle. Let's heat the whole thing up. And as I heat it up, I'm going to try to even it out as I gather. Flames in my way here. There we go. So it's like a very hot booger coming out of my nose. Alright, so got cold. I'll heat it back up. There it is. I'm going to start twisting it. When it starts to firm up and pull out, I'm going to pull it to its final diameter fairly quickly and get as much twist in there as I can. And now I can heat the rod or the glass. I can strongly heat the handle and it'll pull out of the glass. Sometimes it'll leave a slightly bigger end on there. There's in focus. Which is hard to use, so let's just melt that off. Heat the tweezers, melt that glass. Oh, it cracked off. So let's just heat that glass back up so it'll shatter off when I quench it in water. Here it is. And now let's melt off that blob on the end. Now we have another nice twisted. Let's let it focus. There we go. So I've got 2 now, and that's enough to decorate my marble. Set those aside. Now I've got my material set up here. My foil, which is the interstitial layer between the opaque color and the transparent. I've got the transparent rod for the gather. I've got my base color, which I'm going to use for an initial gather and to put in the eyelids afterwards. I've got the color for the iris. I've got the color for the pupil against black. And so I'm all ready to go. Let's start gathering our initial gather, which is this opaque black, and will be the back hemisphere of the marble, which I will decorate later, but it will remain plain for most of the marble. Once I get this gather going, I'm going to go off camera here and check the temperature on my annealing oven, because I forgot to before I sat down. I turned it on. It's on a rheostat, which is a variable resistor dial, like on an electric oven. And I know about where it sits, but as elements age on a electric kiln, things change and drift, so I always verify every day, and I used to just use some analog pyrometers and color. Now I additionally verify with a digital pyrometer, which I have recently installed on all of my kilns this past year. Some of them read in Celsius, others in Fahrenheit, which is cool. So you get to do both. So my gather is getting big. What I'm doing is I mount the gather as the rods are together, and then I change the angle and I twist, and it pulls in some of the rod, and then I start remelting that central gather. One of my rods is getting very short, so I'm going to melt that off. I don't think I have another black rod handy. I might have to get another one when I go off camera. So this I would just fuse to another new rod somewhere down the line. Oh, and here's a black one that's got some pieces already fused together on it. Alright, so my gather got cold, so it's all funky shaped. Let's add a little more black glass from this other rod, which I just merged into it. And now the whole thing's getting hot again, so it's pulling into a sphere as I continue to gather by twisting the two rods together. Alright, that's big enough. Let's get rid of this little short rod that I added like another 1.5 inches worth of rod from this side. And there it is, that gather. Let's melt it and shape it into a hemisphere, and then the minute I check my annealing oven temperature. So I'm going to shape this into a hemisphere just by pushing it into a marble mold. I evened it up as I went. There we go. I'll be back in just a second. Alright, my temperature was a little high, so I turned it down a bit. And my punty jar, so the end of that punty was hot when I grabbed it. Start that again. Alright, so I'm going to heat this stainless steel punty rod or handle up, and I'm going to grab that marble right in the middle of the open, unattached end. Just going to center it a little bit, and I'm going to melt off this glass rod. Now I'm just heating that area that I'm going to flatten. Want the temperatures to even up. I don't want to just push it flat right now, because I don't want to trap a circular air trap in there. And in fact, I can help this out by pushing in the middle of that where that rod was. So and it's drawing itself a little smoother. Let's put it in the magnifying lens. Let's give it another hit with flame, and we'll tap it. I've got a graphite marver pad next to me. And I just gently touch it. I'm just urging it, working with it, not mashing it or squishing it. Think of that. Now I'm ready to pick up my silver, which is going to be the other half of this marble, and I can start heating my clear glass rod. So I'm going to start flashing that in the back flame because it's a big rod. It needs to come up to temperature slowly to avoid shattering. So I'm flashing this, I'm heating this. I'm going to pick up my foil here. Oops, I got my rouge paper on there still. Let's get that a little hotter. I'm going to pick it up. Rouge paper just burned off on the back side. Now I can keep that marble in the back flame, and then I'm heating this rod until I get a nice big gather on there. The large clear rod, I want it to form a real big ball on the end, larger in diameter than the rod itself. So I'm angled slightly back from the flame so that the molten portion of the rod starts rolling back onto the shaft of the rod itself, making the gather droplet bigger and bigger. And keeping this just fairly orange, dark red hot. The background, I've got the foil facing away from the flame because I don't want to fume that off of the surface. I want to protect it. I can see the gather starting to form on this clear rod. Then I have a little bit of impurities on this rod. I'm going to get in there with a tweezer and pull off some of the weird spots. So I'm just going to switch all to one hand here. Got it. Get myself resorted out. This is heating the back flame. This is gathering. Cleaned up that clear glass. It's going to be a nice clear gather now. That first heat on a large diameter rod can look pretty funky. And some of these large diameter rods are pretty awful quality-wise. There's like bubbles in them, scratches on the surface. They've just been grinding against other rods, shipping. It's a good reason to make your own clear glass rods if you have the wherewithal to do it. I will be doing that probably in the next month or two, pulling some clear. Alright, so we got a nice big gather. We're going to cover that silver foil and use the flame to help us separate. And there it is. I'm going to get a little bit more clear on there, so I squish that flat. Getting another gather of clear ready down here. So that touch. And I'm going to keep this on the back flame, the whole marble. Just add another, not a gather as big as that, but I just want a little bit more. So I'll take a smaller gather from this rod and then just put that on there. And you can see that little cap that I've added on there. Now let's heat that whole marble up, and since I've been keeping it heated in the back flame, just take 30 seconds and we'll get that thing heated up enough to start shaping it into a sphere. Once it's spherical, then I can start turning it into an eye. Right now it's just basically half black, half clear, with foil in between. Alright, so it's hot. I'm going to just shape it. Nope. This marble mold's too small. Got a Band-Aid on that's cloth, and it keeps catching in my turning of my narrow steel punty rod, so look at that. Let's move this magnifier a bit. My marble was too cold anyway when I tried to go into that smaller paddle, so we're going to go probably in this one here. Just gently improve the shape. Doesn't have to be perfect at this point, just a little more spherical. There, we did it. I have on the edge, you can see there's still a line between the clear and the color there, so let's heat that up. Get those to merge. I don't want to trap air when I draw on the eyelids. I'll draw on the eyelids with black. I'm going to do some very thin swipe gathers, drawing that on like it's a paintbrush. And there's really not, you know, less is more here. We're not trying to reinvent the shape of the eye. We're just turning this plane into a more suggested eye shape. So going from round to a little bit almond shape or teardrop shape. So I want a good merge between the two, so the background is going to be hot. This is going to be a drippy pull. There's one part of my eyelid. See the other part? I got kind of a lot of glass on there. I would have liked to have had that be a little daintier swipe, like that. See, it's flatter, less glass. This one's bigger. More of a string on there than a swipe. But that's alright. We'll melt that in. Now I'm just backfilling that area, covering the clear. We'll color this clear next. Let's see. Yeah. There's the one I just covered. This side. There's the one that's still open. We'll let the fire pull those together a little bit. I got it in one pass there. And because there was a raised string there, I pushed along the crease, that V shape, so I wouldn't trap air in there. You can go crazy trying not to trap air, but then get out your digital camera or your phone and take a picture with, like, you know, 4 million pixel resolution, and you will find some air bubbles in there. And they're from the initial rod, generally. Alright, so the flame is pulling this spherical. Let's give it some encouragement to go the rest of the way. Just a little light pressure twist in a hemisphere that's bigger than the marble, and then a little spin in a hemisphere that's smaller in diameter than the marble, and kerpap, it's spherical. And look, there is our eye shape. Nice. Now, let's add the iris, and I had selected green in advance, so let's stick with that. I'm going to get a nice wet gather from a green rod, get it nice and hot. I'm going to let it drip down onto the surface here because I want it to be very round. Push and pull. And so the shape I've created is round. And now I'm going to broaden that sphere by pressing it in. So I'm going to get that whole gather pretty hot. The glass surrounding it pretty hot. I almost have too much glass on there. It came out kind of the right size. Now let's put a pupil on there. Dense black pupil. And I want to do the same thing on a smaller scale, and I want to put that dot right in the middle of the one that I just did. Alright, I was a little bit off the center. I'm going to see if I can correct it by pushing it and changing its direction just a little bit. And I did. I fixed the position there. Let's let it resolve. There we go. It's in the center now. Doesn't quite look like it's in the center because it's tilted. I'm going to flatten it the rest of the way and melt it in. And I'm also melting the iris into the background clear right now. Now, there we go. I'm going to heat up a slightly larger clear rod. I'm going to cover this whole thing in clear. But this is preheating. Let's see that pupil and iris resolve. It cools down. Let's look at the whole thing. That looks cool. The foil looks good in the back. Alright. Get that thing warming back up. And heat up with this. It's a medium clear rod. This is a nice, very nice clear rod. Not many bubbles. I pulled this out of my furnace last year, so it is a little sensitive to surface scumming. So I've got a high oxygen flame going right now. And a nice clear gather. I'm going to cover that iris. And let's use a marble mold to push that clear around the hole of the iris. You can see on the side. I've taken that clear, put it on top, and used the hemispherical marble mold to push the clear so it just reaches over the edge of the iris. And it looks neat. Now let's melt it in. Turn my propane back up a little bit. I'd set it as an oxygen-rich flame just to make sure that the clear wasn't getting scummed. Also recently backed my propane pressure back. That has a tendency, if you don't adjust your regulator on a regular basis, your propane temperature will creep up and you'll be thinking, why is my glass so dirty? It's because you're shooting tons of propane out of there at a high pressure. You really need it to only barely register on your low side for clean glass. There. Like that. It's decorated. Alright, so green and purple thread that we made earlier at the beginning. I'm just going to heat up my whole marble so it surface smoother. It's pretty spherical. Not super concerned about that right now. I'm going to turn the flame down to a pencil point, and the first detail I'm going to do first detail I like to do is to line the eye along the lid, defining the shape of the eye. And then I'll do both eyelids, and we'll have a look. Flame back up. Get that marble up to temperature. And then we have to find the edge eyelid. Really looks like an eye now. Now I've made sort of two sides of the back of the marble to decorate. Let's do that. This is my first monster eye of 2021. So I'm going to write 2021 on there. As soon as I add a little bit of doodles. I have doodles that I like. Pause a little bit. I like to draw for, maybe 30 seconds and then even the marble up. You can see, get the drawing. And the camera's flipped here, so that's the 2 for 2021. I'm just going to go ahead and finish this side, decoration-wise, and let's even it up. Then we'll see what that looks like in its intermediate state. And I've used a lot of my first thread that I made. I can get a few more details out of this, or I can switch right away to my next one. We'll switch to the next one. So here we go. 20. We'll just read this backwards. 2021. And little doodles around it. And let's go ahead and put my first little swirl on there with this, the last of this rod. We'll switch to the next one. A little bit fat on the end still, so I'm going to get that off. I want to start drawing a tiny piece. There's my next doodle. With that big wide space to draw on. I'm going to finish my usual swirl pattern on this, the one that I think looks nice. And I have a little spot. I'll make a little mini eye there. Maybe it's a tadpole. Maybe it's a spaceship. Let's see. It's done. Alright, let's heat up the whole thing. Get all that glass smooth into the surface. And we'll start finishing this unattached side of the marble. And we'll just take it easy, getting opaque colors to become smooth. It's kind of a longer process than just smoothing a clear marble that's got color inside of it. Clear really wants to be smooth. It's all one glass on the outside. It just, it's like it seals up like a balloon. All these different things on the outside, it's like crushing a snowball and getting it to be round. It's like some snow's from over there, some snow's from over there, and it doesn't, your hand doesn't make perfect spheres. The glass, the snow doesn't make perfect spheres. So you have to convince it. Patience, spinning, heat. So I haven't even gone through a marble mold yet. And with turning and heat, it's really pulling together. So now I'm just going to give it a little bit of a persuasion by going through a marble mold. The marble mold is a helper. It's a nice thing. It's not a magic thing. The marble mold, the hemisphere shape, can mess up your sphere just as bad as it can fix it. Depends on the person who's doing the glassware. Are you wanting to make a sphere? Have you made a sphere before? Do you know what kind of glass you're dealing with? Can you make adjustments on the fly, pressure-wise, heat-wise, rotation-wise? If you're doing glass, then yes, you can. There we go. I'm going to hit this with the cherrywood marble mold. Oh, yes. Get it out. Here we go. I'm going to hit cherrywood paddle, which are essentially molds that just go on the rim. Spending a few seconds inside each one. Not each one, but a bowl. I'm wearing my new shirt, Pavliscak Studios shirt. It's here for this holiday season. Usually there's shows and stuff like that, so having everyone in nice new shirts, coordinated, it's nice. Not going anywhere this year, I don't think. Alright, so that side is spherical and smooth. So let's let it calm down and start putting my last connection point on this one. I want the glass that touches that eye to be clean and not a big connection. So I've tweezed off some glass that had some oxidation on there. Now I'm just going to let that settle up a little bit and heat off the steel putty on the back side. I don't want to heat that whole area up because I want to clean up that the back side where a lot of my details fed into that connecting rod right there. That's good. So I'm going to heat that up, and I'm going to just twist off that last little bit, getting rid of the messy part and pulling it around in a little bit of a swirl. And now just need to let it pull into the sphere. See, swirled a little bit. Here you can see it. Back end's gonna look nice. Finished all the design elements that came out to that last steel connection point. we've made sort of natural looking and pulling down to a point. So let's, now you can see the side that has the last handle on it is pretty spherical. The side that's hot that I was just working on is not spherical yet. So we're going to heat it up, let heat, rotation, and gravity, surface tension of the glass, pull it a little more spherical. And we're going to give it a little persuasion in the marble mold. Oops. Cracked off my last putty. I'll fix that quickly. Alright, so I made a little flat spot. It was going pretty nice there for a second. It's still alright. I'm just going to take an extra 15 seconds here to even my heat back out on the whole marble. And then I'm going to backtrack a little bit and heat that unattached end some more. And then we're going to go back to where we were before. Go in a hemisphere that's a little bit larger. This one here. It's a little bit larger than the marble that we're working on. Gentle pressure. And we'll go to one that's smaller. We'll spin it. Change our angle of rotation. And now that is very spherical. There we go. So it's the eye. There's the 2021. Backwards. Now let's heat it and let those surface ripples come out. Get really as smooth as we can let it go without touching it with a tool. Then we'll let it calm down, let the surface calm down a little bit, start to cool, and then we'll give it a last spherical shaping in the cherry wood marble mold. Alright, so it's very smooth. The shape got a little bit out of spherical. We're going to keep it spinning, going to calm down, and now it's ready for the mold. Alright, now I use my scissors or my glass jacks to chill that last area on a fireproof plate. We'll tap it off. I'll just tap this around. It'll crack right off, right where I chilled it. Then I'll pick up the torch, polish that last bit. It just came right off. I'll clean any dust out of my torch. Clean up that last little area. There's actually two little areas where I touched the surface of this eye because it was the original punty that I bobbled it and it came loose. Luckily it was in the mold and I was able to quickly reattach that glass punty. Not as perfect as it was the first time. It was okay. And so now I'm polishing those last two connection points off gently. It's sitting in a little divot inside of like a space shuttle tile, compressed ceramic fiberfrax. Now I'm going to heat up a little piece of wire hanger that I've shaped into something for picking up marbles. I'm going to heat it up until it's orange hot, let it just fade to black. Then I can pick up the marble, the right temperature. There it is. Let's try. Now I'm going to go put it in the annealing oven. Be right back. So the annealing oven is set at 970 degrees Fahrenheit, where the glass won't be a liquid, but the molecules will still be able to align their bond angles without changing the shape of the marble. So it will take the stress, the internal stress, out of the marble, and once it cools down, be strong and not susceptible to breakage. Whereas if you just took a hot marble and set it down on a table, it would probably just explode or shatter. If you didn't hold it at its annealing temperature, any imperfections in the glass from me cranking on it or having the temperature uneven as I worked on it or picked it up to take it over there would be then preserved as the glass hardened. The stress in those bond angles would be cemented in place. And then at some point, those bond angles would snap back to the angle that they wanted, and that would transfer to stress on the molecules next to it, possibly causing a crack in the glass, possibly causing it to fracture explosively, which we want to avoid. So the annealing process in glass, very important. And most glass workers spend a lot of time making sure that their annealing ovens are easy to get to, easy to maintain the temperature of, easy to ramp down. They know exactly what's going on after they've made the piece, because you spend all that time making the piece, you want to finish it correctly. And so that's what you're doing here. And then if people are doing cold working on the glass, that's a lot of vibration. So by cold working, like if I didn't flame polish that last point and someone wanted to say polish it out or grind it out and then polish it, that vibration into the piece that they're working on would take advantage of any weakness in the glass and break it. So you have to have something that's nicely annealed before you do any cold working like that. So also preservation of your piece. All right, so I'll see you guys next week, and let's see, I made a bunch of, and I'll post the other information I have for you via text and link. All right, see you guys next week. Thanks for dropping by.